Okay, Shavua Tov, everyone. It's now just after 10:15. I'm going to stop just before 11 because I want to join the live stream for the Levaya of Itai Chen. I weighed up in my mind whether I should go to the Levaya or whether we should do the Shiur. And I figured there'd be thousands of people at the Levaya. And therefore I decided that we could be mechabed Itai and his memory better by continuing the shiur and not missing the shiur. And so I dedicate this shiur to the memory of Itai ben Rubi Halevi, B'chagit, Hashem Yikam Demo. And at 11 o'clock, we'll finish so that those who want to, including myself, can join the live stream and pay our respects in that way. I don't know if any of you have seen the photographs of what went on the streets today with a procession of kavod. Let me see if I can just show you. Here we go. Have a look at this. These are the students outside the school. These are the streets of Polegir Yamim. And these are the little pupils here. They shouldn't have to know about these things. These little boys and girls from the Karlibach school here in Ir Yamim. Mishpachat Talmidei Karlibach Marchinim Rosh Umechabkim et Mishpachat Chen Beshuvo Shel Itai Gibo Yisrael. Family of the Karlibach school hug and nod their head, as it were, to the family Chen with the return of Itai, the hero of Israel. This is what these little boys and girls have to live with in this country, and it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. There's another picture. There's Paul and Diane Kuttner on that end of that picture there. Okay, so we are going to be talking today about soldiers in the army of Israel. We're going to be talking about the army of David HaMelech. And we should bear in mind that that work is not yet done. People like Itai and many others have given their lives to continue that battle in the army of David HaMelech. So let's get to it and let's learn some Torah in his honor and in his memory. We're on chapter 10 of Shmuel Bet.
Johnny.
Yes, Ivor.
I just was mentioned, it's unbelievable. I looked up in Kiryat Shaul in case I was going there. There are 45 dedicated military cemeteries in Israel, up and down the country. 45. In addition, another 20 of the civilian cemeteries have a chelka, a part dedicated to soldiers. It's just mind-blowing and sad.
Yeah, sadly, this is the what we have to live with. And it's due to them that we are able to live with it, and we should never, ever forget it. And I don't think we can forget it. It's there. It's all the time. Unfortunately, I've lost count of the number of levayas of soldiers I've been to in the last 2 years. I think it's about 7 or 8 here in Netanya, in the Netanya military cemetery. But we must not lose heart. We must remember that these soldiers have given their lives so that we can continue here in Eretz Israel, in our land. I was speaking to somebody this morning about various matters, and it came up. There was something on the news came up about a doctor in the UK, a chap called Martin White, Whyte, who has been reprimanded by the GMC but not struck off for writing on a post, ha ha ha, gas the Jews, Heil Hitler. The Holocaust hoax videos are very persuasive, in my opinion. And this guy is a trainee pediatrician in
Unbelievable.
some hospital in the north of England, in Northumbria somewhere. I mean, and he has not been struck off. Just
I'll go
imagine.
over and take care of his hash.
Yeah, thank you. Imagine for two things. Imagine number one, that was said about a different group of people, a different minority group. Imagine the backlash. And secondly, and this is what I was talking to this person about, imagine that we didn't have a state of Israel and that we were stuck in a society. We're the fortunate ones here. We are all living here, apart from Michael, who's half living here, but can move a drop of a hat if he had to. What if there was no Israel? And that is what we had to live with. What if you were a New York Jew today, living in with the prospect of Mamdani as your mayor? Yes, Hannah.
I don't know if you remember or think of the two nurses in Sydney who of Palestinian descent who said that they would harm patients who
Yeah,
came into their care, which is also
yeah,
very
yeah.
frightening if you live
Indeed,
in
indeed,
Sydney.
indeed. What was more frightening to me about, I mean, that was terrible. I agree, 100%. What was more frightening about this fellow is that this was not of Palestinian descent. This was your average trainee doctor. Looks like, an ordinary fellow, white British fellow. And what's more shocking, the fact is that in Australia, Hannah, those two got booted out. To be fair to the Australian nursing association, but this one hasn't even been kicked out. She's been had a slap on the wrist. Anyway, it struck me, and I was discussing this with somebody this morning, that we need to be cognizant all the time of how fortunate we are to live in a time where there is an Eretz Israel, where there is a Medinat Yisrael, and we have where to go, which is our home, and that we have people like Itai, Chain, Hashem Yikom Demo, and all the others who have paid the ultimate sacrifice for us to have that. So I just want to bear that in mind as we're learning.
I just want to
today.
add one thing about being cognizant, and it's not an easy thing for me to say, but we need to also look in our hospitals and see how many people there are who also may not wish us well and who are in positions where they're looking after us. And we have to bear that in mind.
Well, I think it's always a danger in times of conflict that there will be people who want to harm you, and we should always be obviously we should always be aware and cognizant. But on the other hand, we also need to recognise that there are a great deal of people working in our hospitals who are Arabs or Druze who do a fabulous job, and we mustn't lose sight of that as well. And it's a tricky one. It's a very tricky one. On the one hand, you can't tar everybody with the same brush, and on the other hand, you can't be naive either. I don't know how you navigate that, to be honest, but I'm afraid it's beyond my pay grade. But let's do what we can do, and let's learn some Torah. Let's go straight to Shmuel Bet. I'm going to put it on the screen. Shmuel Bet Chapter 10. We spoke last time about this Shiva visit, in a way, that David was sort of doing vicariously through his servants to Chanun, the son of Nachash, the king of Ammon. And we questioned David's, his judgment, really, whether this was a correct thing to do, because we quoted the Pasuk in Dvarim, in Parshat Kitetse. I'll put it on the screen for you. Lo tidrosh shlomam v'tovatam kol yamecha leolam. You shall never seek out their welfare or their good all your days, referring to Ammon and Moab. And so there was some question mark over David's judgment in sending a delegation to express his condolences to Chanun. Of course, the positive side of this was that David is always, as an individual, somebody who recognizes the good that was done to him, feels the need to express gratitude, and that, of course, is a very positive character trait. The problem is, as a king of Israel, this was not necessarily an entirely correct thing to do. And that we've spoken about that up till now. And of course, when David's servants get there, we know from the first two psukim that David sent these men in good faith. He sent them to express their his condolences on behalf of the king and presumably on behalf of the country. And he sent them in good faith, but they weren't received in good faith. They weren't received in good faith. If we look at verse number 3, Vayomru sorei b'nei Amon el Chanun adonehem. The princes, the ministers of Ammon said to Chanun, their king, their lord, Hamachabed David et avicha beinecha ki shalach lecha menachamim. Really? Do you really think that's why David has sent these people to honor you, to honor your father? Not at all, he says. Halo ba'avul chakor et ha'ir uleragla ulehofcha shlach David et avadav elecha. Surely, halo means surely. Surely, the real reason that David has sent these people is to spy out the land, to do a recce. This is the Mossad. This is not David sending condolences. These are spies. Don't be so naive, says the ministers to Chanun.
It's human intelligence, they call it.
Yeah,
there's SIGINT, there's human, and there's something else, but I forgot what it is, the third one. Human intelligence. That's sending feet on the ground.
So that's what the ministers of Ammon say. And of course, as we said last week, there is precedent for this because Moshe sent spies, Yoshua sent spies, and now they're saying David sent spies.
There's also the issue of when David wanted to go and fight with the Philistines, and the generals said to the king, it wasn't Abimelech, it was somebody else, but never mind.
Achish.
Yeah, that, what do you want to take David with? David's a fifth column. David is your enemy. And so David must have had a pretty strong reputation in the area if everybody suspects him all the time.
Yeah, that was in the story of Ziklag, if you remember, correct, Hannah? And there's something else. There's also a little bit of, I don't know, poetic justice, if you like. Remember what happened with Avner and Yoav. Do you remember that story? Avner, who was the chief of staff of Ishbosheth, son of Shaul, he decided to cross the floor and come to David and said to David, I can deliver you the whole people together and we'll have a united kingdom. David believed him and sent him off in peace. What did Yoav do? First of all, who was Yoav?
He's chief of staff.
David's chief of staff. Yoav said to David, don't be so naive. He's come to spy out the land. And Yoav, and Dave, what does David say when Yoav says that?
I trust him.
No.
No. Okay.
The rest of you are right. Nothing. Nothing. That's what he says. And the Mefarshim are somewhat critical of David for not saying anything and not restraining Yoav. Remember, it all came back and fell on David's shoulders when Yoav went and killed Avner. David had to do a hard job to persuade the rest of Shaul's team, if you like, the Binyamin team, that he didn't have anything to do with Avner's death. Do you remember that? He had to really work hard to show them that he was not connected with that, and he mourned excessively, as it were, for Avner. So in a way, there's a little bit of, midah keneged midah going on. Either way, what's really interesting about this is that we see again, this is happened a few times now. It happened with Achish that Hannah mentioned. It happened with David, where Yoav was suspicious, and it's happening here with Chanun. The ministers are more suspicious than the king. The ministers seem to have their sort of finger on the pulse a bit more than the king. The king seems to be a little bit more trusting, a little bit more distant, maybe, and that's possibly because the ministers have got their ear to the ground, as it were. They're closer to the people, and they are the ones that are not trusting. Now, what I'd like to suggest to you is that Chanun, who is the king here, is not sure. He's not sure about this. If he thought that his ministers were right, what would he do to those servants?
Execute. Kill them.
He'd execute them. He might torture them first to find out a bit of information, but he would kill them, execute them. Shall we have a look what he actually did? Verse 4. And Chanun took David's servants. Well, let's do it in the Hebrew first. Vayikach Chanun et avdei David. Chanun took the servants of David. Vayigalach et chatzi zekanam. He cut off half their beards. Half their beards. Vayichrot et madvehem. And he cut off their uniforms. Bechetzi ad shtotehem. They cut them in half, all the way up to their backsides. Vayeshalchem, and he sent them away.
Can't hear you.
Right. So what did he do? He shaved off half their beards. What does that mean? Shaved off half their beards. Well, it could mean one of three things, couldn't it? What could it mean? Michael Krauss, give me at least one explanation of shaving off half your beard.
Shave his head.
Making them look ridiculous.
By doing what?
Shaving the hair off their heads.
No. Their beards. It says the kanam, their beards. You can shave half a beard in two ways. You can shave half a beard by cutting it in half, right? You've got a long beard down to here, you cut it in half. Or you can shave half a face, right? Now, I think you thought, Michael, they shaved half the face because that would make them look ridiculous.
Yep.
Right? But it could be either. The third explanation of cutting off half their beards means they cut off the beards of half of them. But that doesn't really make sense, as we'll see a bit later on. So he cuts off half their beard, and he cuts off their garments up to their backsides. So presumably they didn't have trousers and a top. They must have had these long tunics. What do they call them? Jabaliyas, or what they call? What's that? The word? Is it something like that? Anybody know the word for that long garment that the Muslim men wear? I think it's called something like that. It's coming like Jabaliya anyway. Whatever it is.
Jabaliya.
Jabaliya. So I was right. Yeah.
Jabaliya.
So they must have worn some kind of garment like that, some kind of long garment, because what they've done is they've cut them in half up to the buttocks. Now, obviously, the reason for that is to shame them, right? It's to shame them. You know, you walk around with your backside showing. That's it's disgraceful. You walk around with half your beard, you look ridiculous, and there's obviously a reason for it. So Chanun did not really, well, he wasn't sure that these were spies, because if he was sure they were spies, he'd torture them and then execute them. But he didn't. He shamed them and sent them away. Now,
Rabbi,
yeah.
you made the assumption that they cut them in half from the bottom up. Yeah, when I read it, I made the assumption that they cut it from the top down to the waist, and maybe they held it up with a string or something.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I never even occurred to me that. I think it's the bottom half. Okay, let's take a poll round the table. Who thinks that they were cut from the bottom half, leaving their top half up to their buttocks intact and the bottom half empty? I think that.
I think that.
Yeah. Anybody think like Hannah, that they cut the top half off and just left them with their bottom half? Now, I think you're on your own there, Hannah.
Regarding the beards, I'm talking about going back to the beards. Look what we saw 2 months ago in Syria, the jihadist Syrians did to the Druze. It's exactly what they did to them. They shaved half their beards.
I'm going to come to that in a sec. I'm coming to that in a sec, Ivor. Before I get to that, on the beard issue, it showed, it was a sign, right? If you got half your beard missing, something's happened to you, right? It's a sign. There's also precedent for something like that earlier on in Shmuel. What am I referring to? Also to do with Ammon. Remember Yavesh Gilad? What did Ammon say to Yavesh Gilad? That they would look after them, they would do a peace treaty, but they had to do something to themselves. What did they have to do?
Poke their eyes out. One eye.
Yes. Poke one eye. Can you remember which one? Well, you've got a 1 in 2 chance. Go on, have a guess.
Right eye.
Correct, the right eye. Yeah, they were told they had to poke out their right eye. They didn't do it because Shaul came to their rescue and had a battle with Ammon. But this idea of having a sign to show that you are, as it were, subservient. Now, Chanun's sign was not a permanent sign like Yavesh Gilad's sign was to be. And that's why I think that Chanun did not really believe his ministers, because if he really believed them, he'd torture them and kill them. And if he believed them a bit, he would have given them a permanent sign, like gouging out their right eye. He gave them a half-hearted sort of slap on the wrist, a bit like our Dr. White got from the GMC, a half-hearted slap on the wrist and nothing more. And so I'm just going to ask Michael Kraus, if you wanted to know what had gone on, Michael, in a little bit more detail, or you wanted to see something about this, where would you look?
Differently, I mean, which
you
I've got
would
in front
indeed.
of me.
You would, and you'd look in chapter 19.
Yep.
There it is, chapter 19, verse 4. The story is retold. Vayikach Chanun et avdei David vayagalachem, and he shaved them. Right? It doesn't say he shaved half their beards. It says he shaved them. Now, if you were just reading that, you wouldn't know that he'd shaved half the beard. You would think he'd shaved their whole beard off. That's interesting. Vayichrot et madvehem bechatzi, cut their garments in half. Ad hamifsa'a, up to the groin, vayashalchem, and he sent them away. So there are two things we need to speak about here. Why in Divrei Hayamim does it not mention half the beard? And why in Divrei Hayamim has it changed the word to mifsa'a, which is translated here as groin, whereas in Shmuel it is shtotehem, which is the buttocks. Let's deal with the second question first because it's easy. And it seems that shtotehem this is the only place in Tanakh where this word is used. It's a rare word, and according to what I read, it's a rude word, and Divrei Hayamim have sort of upgraded the word to a more modern word in the time when Divrei Hayamim was written, and a more acceptable, less rude word. So that's why it's changed the thing. Why do you think in Divrei Hayamim did it not tell you about the half beard? Any ideas? Let's have a look at this. What can you see here?
Yes. They all have beards.
They all have beards.
Some of them
Correct.
don't have moustaches, but they all have beards.
Ah, that was the
You
point.
could tell,
Now this chap.
You could tell an Islamic fundamentalist by the fact that he doesn't have a moustache, but they all have beards, but they don't have moustaches.
Okay, so I'm going to correct you there because not every Muslim man who has a beard and no moustache is a fundamentalist. He will be a religious man because that is their halacha. This chap, I don't know what he's doing in here because when I asked for some pictures from Google, I asked, as you can see at the top here, for a Muslim beard without moustache. So these are all, I don't know what he's doing there either because he's not a Muslim. But this one has got a moustache without a beard, so he shouldn't be there. But all of these are, as you can see, they are religious men. Some of them may be fundamentalists, some of them maybe not. But that is the halacha for them, that they shave their moustache, but they don't shave their beards. Yeah. So it may well be that when we're talking about half the beard, it may not have been half that way. It may have been moustache has gone and beard has been left in order to show that is different. It seems that that's the way it was at that time too. Obviously, we're talking way, many centuries before Islam. So I just wanted to show you that. So what happens is, according to Shmuel at least, they shaved half of the beard and cut off their garments, and he sent them away. Where were they going? Where would they go when he sent them away?
Back to David.
Back to David. But they never got there because, verse 5, Yagidu le David, and they told David, presumably word got out through the Pony Express or whatever, got back to David that this is what had happened. How do you think David would have felt at this point?
Insulted.
Insulted. Yeah, very insulted. I think that's exactly the right word. He would have felt very insulted and angry. What do we know about David when he gets angry?
He goes to war.
Loses his rag.
Goes to
He
war.
loses, he loses his rag and he goes to war, and that's what he does here. And I think it's understandable that he was insulted. Whether it's understandable he went to war about it is another story, but he was insulted. They told to David Vayishlach likratam, and he came out to meet them. He came out to meet them. The king came out of his palace, out of his capital, and he went to meet these people. He went to meet these men that he'd sent. Why did he do that?
To apologize.
Yeah, to show solidarity with them and to express his upset that this has happened to these men.
Johnny,
And one sec. And then the pasuk tells us, he says, Ki hayu ha'anashim nichlamim ma'od. They were embarrassed. They were ashamed. They were ashamed because they had no gatkis on and they had half a beard, right? They were ashamed. And so because they felt shame, the king came out to give them kavod. If the king comes out to you, that is giving kavod to you. Normally, people go to the king. The fact that the king came out, Ki hayu anashim nichlamim ma'od. Vayoma hamelech, and the king said, Shavu biyericho ad yitzamach zekanechem v'shavtem. Stay in Jericho until your beards grow, and then you can return. What did you want to say, Jackie, before we go on to that bit?
two things. Why did David send servants and not military men? And second of all, did they just stand still then let their beards get cut off and their tunics cut in half? No one struggled? No one tried to fight back or anything?
Okay, first question. Why did he send servants and not military people? Because Dafka, not military people, because he was sending a delegation in peace to express condolences to a bereaved king. To send a military presence may well have been interpreted as an act of aggression. I think Dafka, he didn't send military people to show that this was not.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
it shows conciliance. He wanted to be conciliatory, so he sent his servants, not military men.
Correct, but the princes said, don't be fooled by David. He's sent servants, but really, these are Mossadniks. These are people who are trying to spy out the land. And the second question, 1 second, Ivor. The second question, why did they just allow it? Well, presumably they didn't have much of a choice because they would have had soldiers standing over them, ready to kill them if they resisted. So I guess, they didn't really have any opportunity to resist. Yes, Ivor. Yeah,
I looked a little bit at the background of. So I think it was a hint in Da'at Mikra. There's an incredible collection of about 20,000 clay tablets, cuneiform tablets, which were found in Syria from the time of Mesopotamia, from the time of Babylonia. They're in a big museum there, and that's from about 3,000 years ago, and they talk about the way of life, everything that was current and not current, and they specifically mentioned there that it was very, very common to send in spies, as David was suspected of, between any kingdom. It was normal practice. There was nothing unusual about it.
So it was a fair assumption on the part of the ministers then.
Yeah.
Okay. Fine. Now then, Shavu b'Yericho, stay in Jericho. Wait a minute.
Jericho doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, why does Jericho not exist anymore, Michael?
Because it was destroyed by Joshua, and the Jews were told not to live there.
And they were told not to rebuild it. They weren't told not to live there.
What are you talking about, Michael? Jericho still exists.
Wait a minute.
The curse on Jericho is not to rebuild it, but nobody said you can't live there.
Okay, let's read what it says in Joshua. It's on the screen for you. It's in Sefer Yehoshua, chapter 6. V'ha'ir sarfu ba'esh. And they burnt the city with fire, v'chol asher ba, and everything that was in it, רק הכסף והזהב וכלי הנחושת והברזל נתנו אוצר בית השם. The gold and the silver and everything else, the iron and the copper, went to the treasury of the Mishkan. ואת רחב הזונה ואת בית אביה ואת כל אשר לה החיה Yoshua. Yoshua kept alive Rachav and all her family. That was part of the deal. Vateshev bekerev Yisrael, and she dwelt in the midst of Israel ad hayom hazeh, until this day. Some say that she married Yehoshua. Ki hechbia et hamalachim asher shalach Yehoshua laragel et Yericho, because she hid the messengers that Yehoshua sent to spy out Jericho. And here comes the curse. Here comes the oath. Vayashba Yehoshua be'etahi lemor, and Yehoshua made them swear, adjured them, it says here, which means Vayashba is a causative form. He made them swear at that time, Arur ha'ish lifnei Hashem, asher yakum uvana et ha'ir azot. Cursed will be the man who gets up and establishes and builds this city, et Yericho, bivchoro yitzadena, uvetziro yatziv delateha. With the loss of his firstborn shall he lay its foundation, and with the loss of his youngest son shall he set up its gates. Meaning that anybody who builds up Yericho will be cursed, lo aleinu, with the death of his children. And so the question arose as to what's going on in our Asuk. David says, go to Yericho and stay there. Why Yericho, Michael?
That's the question. It shouldn't exist at that particular point in time.
Okay, so what it means
Then you
is...
keep freaking up.
If he goes
Yeah.
there, nobody's going to go there and see them.
Yes, exactly. It's a perfect place to hide out until your beard goes. Go to Yericho. Nothing's going on there. The city's not been built, or if it has been built, it's a small, it's not a major city, because that curse was still in people's minds, as it were, from the time of Yehoshua. It's a perfect place to be. Who wouldn't be in Yericho?
A young family.
Jews. That's who.
A young
Bnei
family.
Israel. Bnei Yehuda. They won't go to Yericho. It's a cursed place. So if you are waiting for your beard to grow, and you don't want to be seen by your people because you're ashamed not to have a beard, or only to have half a beard, then the perfect place to go is Yericho. I remember when I was a lecturer in a youth group called Jewish Youth Study Groups. Anybody go to Jewish Youth Study Groups in their youth? Ivor, were you a study grouper? No? David, you were a study grouper?
Yeah.
It was me.
So I was a lecturer. I never went to study groups as a kid. Never even heard of it. It didn't really exist in Manchester. But when I was older, I was invited to go as a lecturer by some friends who were also lecturers there. And this I must be talking about the late 80s, early 90s. And these were teenage kids who were not particularly knowledgeable at this point, but very interested to know. And there was learning going on in the mornings and activities going on in the afternoon. It was a fabulous organization, actually. But I remember one kid, on the first day that they got there, he went off to the barber's and he had a Magen David carved into his haircut at the back. He cut his hair very short. And I mean, today, lots of people do these things. They have these funny shapes in their hairstyles. That was like unheard of then. I'm talking 30 years ago at least, probably a bit more. And he came back from the barbers with this Magen David, big Magen David. All of the back of his head over here was a Magen David. And he was the cool kid on the block, right? Everybody thought that he was cool as chips. He was the bee's knees. Anyway, study group. This was in the summer camp, which went on for 2 weeks. About 12 days later, he realized that his mum was coming to get him to take him home in a day or two. And this had not really regrown very much. And suddenly he wasn't such a big shot. And suddenly he wasn't such a cool guy, because he was, he could have done with going to Jericho for a couple of weeks until it grew. And when I read this, it reminded me of this lad who had got his Magen David in his head. Baruch Hashem, it was a Magen David. It could have been worse. And his mum came to get him and did not give him too much of a hard time, to be fair. Anyway, so they went off to Jericho because there wouldn't be anybody. There wouldn't be anybody to see them. Now we're going to stop there because it's just coming up to 11 o'clock. But we'll just do the next pasuk, because it will be an introduction to next week's shiur. As Michael has said, when David gets offended and insulted, he loses his rag. And the Bnei Ammon preempted that. Let's have a look at verse 6. Vayiru Bnei Ammon ki nivashu b'David. The children of Ammon saw that they had become odious to David. How did they know they'd become odious to David? Well, presumably he let them know this was not a nice thing to have done to my messengers, and I am none too pleased. You can imagine President Trump, right, being insulted by the BBC, for example, just to bring something in that may be topical or maybe not. Right, I guess he's none too pleased with being insulted by the BBC. If I were the BBC today, I would be looking to see how much I had in my coffers to pay the damages for when he sues them, because then I would be very worried. And the Bnei Ammon were very worried. They saw they'd become odious to David. Vayishlachu Bnei Ammon vayiskaru, not vayishkaru. That would be they got drunk. Vayiskaru. They hired et Aram bet Rechov, bet Aram Tzova, 20,000 raglei, bet Melech Ma'acha 1,000 ish, ve'ish tov 12,000 ish. They sent off for mercenaries. They hired a whole bunch of mercenaries, 20,000 foot soldiers, and another 1,000 and another 12,000. Forget the numbers, a lot. They hired a whole bunch of mercenaries. Why did they hire those mercenaries? What were they expecting?
An attack.
A war. They were expecting war with, yeah.
They were expecting war. And what did they get?
Groveling.
They got war. No, they got war. You'll see in next week's shiur, please God, they got war. So we'll stop there. And it's a good place to stop, because this is where David is about to go into battle with the Bnei Ammon. We'll go into it a bit more detail next week, and we'll just sign off again.
Johnny, does the shiur start at 10 o'clock now?
No, it starts 10:15, but I wanted to finish at 11 because I want to go to the live stream of Itai's Kfura.
Okay.
Just one thing. There's a pasuk that says, Av mochel al kvodo, kvodo machul, melech mochel al kvodo, kvodo lo machul, which means that if you insult the king has to react.
Correct.
Hello?
Correct. The king, and that also, by the way, goes for a Torah scholar as well. A Torah scholar is not allowed to be mochel on his kavod, because the kavod is not given to the person. The kavod is given to the position of king in your situation, and the position of a Torah scholar. So whereas a Torah scholar may be very humble and say, I don't care, they can insult me whatever they want, he's not allowed to do that, because he's not allowed to be mochel on the kavod of the Torah itself. So you're right, he had to react. Okay, we'll wish everybody a Shavua Tov, we'll gather again next week to carry on.
Right of.